Friends, hello. Good to be back. Good to see everyone. Just give me 1 second. I'm the only one over here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on Instagram. Just give me 2 seconds. I'm going to reach over. It's not going to be pretty, but give me a second. All right, we're in business. Who is here? Gloria Oshodi. How are you? Princess, my princess, Ogumola, how are you? Thank you for coming. Good to see you. It's such a pleasure to always see my good friends. Instagram. Hello. I see quite a few people joining. How's audio? How are we doing? It's hot over here. Jeez, man. We're in LA, and sometimes in LA in April and May, it's almost like it's summer sometimes. You get 80-degree temperatures. But I'm excited to be here. We're going to give it a few more minutes for people to join. We're doing great. Thank you. That's Alex. He said we're doing great. Let's see. We have an amazing topic here. So we'll give people exactly 1 more minute to join. I will start. I promised myself we have so much to cover today that I'm going to move very fast, and I'm going to move strategically, which means a lot less, over talking, and a lot less to the point to try to get you guys the information that you need. But it's really hot. I need a fan or something over here. But 1 more minute. Henry, that's my man. Henry's always here on time. I love it. And hey, Celia, good to see you. Good to see you. I guess what? Next week, we're going to have something which was so popular that we brought it back. Question and answer. Question and answer. And guess what? We're going to do it a different way next week, which means send your videos. If you have a question, send your video. We'll play the video, and then I'll answer the question. So you'll be on air. So be careful. Make sure you look good. Be in your Sunday best so you look great. Again, we'll give it about 30 seconds. Hi, just one me. Hello there. Good to see you. Good to see you. Okay, we're going to start. This whole month has been about education funding and reducing student debt, right? We've talked a lot about a lot of different things to reduce debt. 2 weeks ago, I gave you the specific step-by-step instructions to reduce or eliminate your student debt, including federal programs. I know these people they're trying to steam me out of here or something. It's really hot. I got all kinds of lights over here. And I got my friends on Instagram who are on, you get to see a back seat, you get to see a little bit of the computers and all that. But anyway, so 2 weeks ago, I gave you those specific step-by-step instructions on how to eliminate your student debt, including federal programs, state programs, and employer-sponsored programs. Last Sunday, which was last week, I gave you specific step-by-step instructions and resources to get scholarships, grants, and how to pay for college, including federal, state, institutional, and private institutions like companies and nonprofits. Today is the finale of the trifecta because we will discuss the best ways to fund your or your child's education. This, just so you know, this question is what I get asked the most. It is really a question that most people get to ask me all the time. So that's why I'm talking about it today. But could we turn the AC up a little bit? Alex, could you put it on pause for about 30 more seconds? Let's get some AC over here. It's really hot. I don't know why they're trying to steam me over here. Could we do a 30-second pause? Great. And we'll be back in 30 seconds, ladies and gentlemen, so we can get some air in here. Okay? Friends on Instagram are still there, and we are back. Are we in business? Are we live? Okay, great. So This is the question I get asked the most. What's the best way to fund education? The most tax efficient way that's protected from creditors, where I can get the most amount of money and I can actually accumulate resources that will help myself or my child. So keep in mind, I give you the answers today. But keep in mind, what I give you today is is very general advice. It's not specific. Normally, when I meet with people, I'm an investment advisor. I meet with people and we look at their finances, we look at their assets, their liabilities, we look at what they expect to spend for college, and then we give them specific advice. Because I don't have you in front of me and I'm not doing that analysis, what I'm giving you is very generic advice, right? But it's specific to the investments, but not to you. In order for you to find the best investment for you, you have to do your own research. Well, we'll start with me now. What I'm going to tell you, but you want to go to your advisor, or you want to go online, and you want to check these things out. So it's very, very important for you to do that. So first, the place is not to take money out to fund your child's college expenses. Hi, Tammy. Hey, Darlene. Darlene is back. Darlene got mad at me because I spelled her name wrong. Darlene instead of Darleen. I apologize. I won't do it again. Darlene is a friend of mine from Boston. I went to school at Harvard, and she was one of my closest friends. Anyway, here's the places not to take money out for college. Number one is your 401k. Please don't take money out from your 401k to fund your college expenses. Okay? The reason why is because first, let me talk about a 401k. It's a tax-deductible plan that is set up for you. Your employer sets up for you, and you put the money in, and your employer sometimes matches. It's tax deferred. You pay the taxes when you take it out, and it's supposed to be for retirement. When you take your money out from your 401k, what you're doing is you're depleting your retirement resources. Let me tell you something. You can borrow money to go to school. If you don't have enough money for your child, you can borrow money. And your child has like 50 or 60 years to pay it off. But if you take money out of your 401k, you can't borrow money to retire. So when you're 65 years old or you're 70 years old and you're ready to retire, you go to the bank and you tell the bank, hey, give me money because I want to retire. They're going to say, how are you going to pay it back? You're going to say, I don't know. Well, guess what? They're not going to give it to you. So the best thing for you to do is to keep doing your 401k. Please do not take your 401k out, whether it's a loan or a hardship. You could take up to $10,000 for college expenses, but we don't recommend it. Please keep your 401k in there for retirement. That's what it's in there for. The second place not to take money out to fund college expenses for yourself or your child is your home. I've been told by many, many people, I've been asked, look, my child wants to go to college. I want to take a HELOC. I want to get a second. I want to take money out of my home. Don't. If you default on your student debt or your child defaults on their student debt, it'll affect your credit. It's very bad. Don't default. It's very, very bad. But it only affects your credit. If you default on paying your mortgage, they will take your home. We don't want that. So please, don't borrow money from your home to fund college expenses for yourself or your child. Now let's talk about what I consider the 5 best ways to fund college expenses. Number one, well, I wouldn't say best, the most popular ways. Some of them are really good. Some are so-so. I'll give you the pros. I'll give you the cons. I'll give you all the scoop on these things. So let's start. The first we're going to talk about is savings accounts and CDs. The second we're going to talk about is investment accounts, also called non-qualified investment accounts. Non-qualified because it's not tax efficient. It's not a retirement account. A retirement account is called a qualified account. This is non-qualified. Custodial accounts is the third thing we're going to talk about. Coverdell ESAs or education IRAs is the fourth thing we're going to talk about. And number 5, 529 education plans. That's the fifth thing we're going to talk about. I'm going to give you the pros. I'm going to give you the cons. I'm going to give you the entire scoop. I'm going to give you my recommendations. And please, right? It's still a little hot, but it's getting a little cooler. Thank goodness. Please take my recommendations and go do your own research, right? It's important. Now let's start. Hi, Tim. I see you got a question over there. I will answer your question. Just so you know, my friends on Instagram, please go over to YouTube or Facebook, right? And you can interact because I can see you, but I can't see your words and I can't see your comments. So please go over to YouTube and make sure to subscribe. Hit the subscribe button so you have all this good stuff coming at you. Okay. So the first way to save for college that most people, it's actually one of the worst ways to save for college, but it's the way most people tend to do it. Savings accounts and CDs. As you all know, savings accounts are fixed interest products. They give you what, 0.2%, 0.3%. They're offered by banks and credit unions, right? And most people save money through this mechanism. Here's the pros. Here's the good thing about savings accounts and CDs, right? It's 100% liquid. You can always take it out whenever you need it. The funds are easily accessible. Look, online, you could just do a rollover. You could swipe your debit card. It's easy to monitor right on your phone. The average interest rate, you get interest, 0.04%. I talked about this about 3 weeks ago when I talked about banks and changing your banks to a higher yield. The average savings account now is 0.04%. I told you how to increase this, but that's not this subject. Go back and look at YouTube. I think it was number 5 or 6. We're on number 8 now. It has FDIC insurance. That's a big deal. Up to $250,000 for you, $500,000 for you and your spouse if it's a joint account. It could also be easily accessed by a joint owner. So if you're incapacitated and you have a joint owner like your wife or your husband, then they can actually take the money out and actually use it for the purpose it's intended for. Savings accounts have many benefits, but they have many, many drawbacks and many cons. You get very little interest. 0.04% sucks. I'm sorry. You can't live on that stuff. You know why? The low interest. Look at this thing called inflation. Inflation is the cost of goods and services that you buy, just normal. Right now, it's 1.25%. If you're making 0.4% and the things you're buying are growing at 1.25%, you're actually losing money and you don't even know it. Tuition costs, according to Business Insider, over the last 5 years has grown an average of 8% every year. That's how much tuition is going up. So if you're only making 0.4%, how are you ever going to catch up? The interest is fixed. You can't change it. You can negotiate. You can move it from one account to the other, but maybe you'll get 0.3, maybe you get 0.4, maybe you get 0.5. Still not very good. It's taxable. Imagine that puny 0.4% they pay you. Now you got to pay taxes on that. What? It's not protected from creditors. You can get sued. They can sue you and they can take your bank account if they get a judgment. So, finally, it's used in calculating your financial need, which means when you fill out that FAFSA form, you got to put it in there. And it doesn't help you. It actually hurts you. So, savings accounts. Now, savings accounts and CDs have a lot of the same pros and cons, but there are a few pros and cons, one or two that CDs have that savings accounts don't have. For example, CDs actually give you a higher interest rate, especially if you lock it up for a while. You can get, according to the Wall Street Journal and Bankrate, you get as much as 0.47%. That's more than 10 times more than the 0.04% that you earn on the average savings account. 0.4%, excuse me, that still sucks in my book, especially when you lock it up for 5 years. You take it out, they penalize you. Why? I don't know, but they do penalize you. Anyway, that's still a benefit because you get a little bit more than a savings account. The con, very, very similar to savings account. So I wouldn't recommend. I wouldn't recommend necessarily your CD. You're locked up for 5 years. You break it, boom, you got to pay a penalty. So, non-qualified investment accounts. That's the second type of investment account account we're going to talk about. So we just talked about savings accounts and CDs. Now we're going to talk about non-qualified investment accounts. These are accounts that don't qualify for tax deferred status like a 529 or like a Coverdell ESA or like a 401k. But you can open up these accounts at Robinhood, TD Ameritrade, Schwab, Fidelity. You can go online and you can open up one of these accounts. Here's the benefit. I'm sure most of you have heard of these accounts. Here's the pro and here's the con. Pro meaning here's the good stuff and here's the bad stuff. The investment options with these accounts, almost unlimited. You can buy stocks, you can buy exchange traded funds, you can buy mutual funds, you can buy Google. If you like Apple, if you like Tesla, you can buy those in there. It's more flexible in terms of what you can buy than a savings account or a CD. So your potential gains are higher. Let me drink some water. Your potential gain, I've been sweating so much, I got to drink some water over here. They're trying to sweat me out of here. It's my own house, but Alex is trying to sweat me out of here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to drink water. I'm going to keep going. Anyway, your potential gains are much higher in a CD than a CD or a savings account because it's invested in stocks and bonds. Meaning that you have to save, if your investments are growing larger, they're growing greater, you have to save a lot less money. So instead of having to save $300 a month for education, for example, because your account is making 0.04%, you might only have to save $200 a month if your account is growing by 10%. But it could lose money. We'll get to that. Another benefit of investment accounts is that it's liquid, just like a CD. Well, just like a savings account, not a CD, just like a savings account. You can deposit and withdraw the money from your brokerage account at any time. It's on your phone. If you go to Robinhood or you go to TD Ameritrade, you go to Fidelity, we don't recommend anybody on this show. We talk about the benefits and the pros and cons, and we give you the option of doing it yourself. We give you the option of going to talk to your financial advisor. It's easy to monitor, but it's not protected from creditors. And that's one of the biggest cons. There is no tax benefit. That's one of the drawbacks to an investment account. A non-qualified investment account, you get to pay taxes on it every year. So if you have $10,000 and you happen to make, you had a good year. So you made 10%, you made $1,000. Your tax rate is 30%. Now you got to pay $300 in taxes. Why? That money should be growing for your child. It also could fluctuate up and down. You remember? So I said you could make money. You could also lose money. So make sure to diversify your investments. I see a lot of people want to buy Google. They want to buy Facebook. They want to buy Apple. They think of the money going up. What happens is it can actually go down. So what you want to do is you want to diversify. You want to buy stocks. You want to buy bonds. You want to put in some cash. You want to buy international. That's called diversification because it could lose money. Any investment you buy, apart from maybe savings accounts, and you are losing money on inflation with savings accounts. You're not using cash value, but you're losing money based on inflation. With these investment accounts I'm talking about, you can lose money. But if you keep it in there for a long enough period and you diversify, history has shown that you will more likely than not, make money. With an investment account, another drawback is the gains are taxed. You get to pay taxes on the investment accounts. Also, depending on the institution where the funds are held and what you're invested in, you may have to pay management fees and commissions, which could be pretty high. Look, we operate investment accounts, through the Pacific Group, right? You can come to me and set up an account. I'm going to charge you. Why not? Because I'm working, right? So with some of these accounts, you actually pay investments and you pay management fees. It's also not protected from creditors. Unless you put your investment account in a trust, if you get sued, they can come after you for that money. Additionally, your investment account, your non-qualified investment account is calculated as part of your FAFSA application, which means it hurts you. So we just went over savings accounts, CDs, and also investment accounts. We went over the pros and the cons. Now let's talk about this thing called custodial accounts. That's number 3. You remember, I'm going to give you 5. And in my opinion, they're going from not so good to great. Custodial accounts are the third way for you to fund college expenses. There's 2 ways to do that. One is called, Uniform Transfer to Minors Act, UTMAs, UTMAs. The other one is called UGMAs, UGMAs, Uniform Gift to Minors Act. UTMAs and UGMAs are very similar. We like UTMAs the most because you get to do almost anything. You can do real estate, you can do stocks, you can do bonds. They're more flexible. So most of what I'm talking about today are UTMAs, Uniform Transfer to Minors Act, UTMAs. These accounts, called custodial accounts, are used to protect the assets of a minor until he or she reaches the age of majority, which in most states is 18 years old, except in Alabama and Nebraska, age of majority is 19, and in Mississippi, it's 21. I don't know why, but don't ask me. That's what it is. Here's the benefits of these accounts, right? Here's the pros of custodial accounts. Here's the good thing about them. There's no limit on how the funds are used. You don't have to they don't have to necessarily be used for education expenses. Remember, the kid is going to own this thing at 18 years old. So the funds can be used for, I don't know, buying a house, down payment on a car, starting a business for the child, which is good. There's a wide degree of investment options, just like your non-qualified investment account I talked about. You can buy stocks, you can buy bonds, you can buy ETFs and mutual funds, your cash. It's great. Opportunities for higher return. There's risk too, but you still get to make more potentially with a custodial account than with a CD or savings account. The contribution sources can include things like real estate, art, and patents. Yeah. There's no contribution limit. You can put as much money as you want in there. However, there are some tax advantages, which means the first $1,100 is tax-free. Let me repeat. The first $1,100 of gains in the account is tax-free. So if you have an account and you have $10,000 and you make 10% that year, that's $1,000, no taxes. But if you make 20%, guess what? Still no taxes. You know why? Because the next $1,100 is at the child's tax bracket. So it's minimal taxes. Kids don't make a lot of money, right? Maybe 5, 10%, 15% tax bracket. So the first $1,100 of gains, not the principal, the gains, it's tax-free. The next $1,100 up to that's a total of $2,200 is at the child's tax bracket, which is low. Any gains over $2,200, you got to pay taxes on it, just like the non-qualified investment account. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you've been saving for a long time. Now you have $100,000 in this account, the custodial account. And that account had a great year. You made 10%. You made $10,000 in gains. The first $1,100 is tax-free. The remaining another $1,100 is taxed at the child's bracket. The balance of almost $7,800 is taxed at your tax bracket. X! That hurts. Also, these accounts are generally protected from creditors. So that's a good thing. Now let's talk about the downside of these accounts, right? Because everything has a pro and everything has a con. I'll give you all the scoop today, right? I always give you the real deal. Always. Like we said, the tax benefit of custodial accounts is limited. It's only protected up to $2,200. And even $1,100 of that, that's the last the second $1,100 is taxed at the kid's tax rate. It's minimum, but it's still taxed at the kid's tax. Unless you have a kid that has a lot of money. I don't know how. You have a 6-year-old that's making tons of money. But in general, anything over $2,200 is taxable. That's a downside because you want as much money growing in that plan tax deferred so you don't have to pay any taxes. Another major drawback of these accounts is the custodian, the guardian, the person who puts the money in, that person has limited control after the kid hits 18 years old, right? In general, with 47 states. So once the child hits the age of majority, that's 18 years old, they can use the funds however they want. So that kid realizes, you know what, I want to move from home. I want to go to Malibu. I want to buy a mansion. I want to buy a nice Ferrari with your money, your college money. You can't stop them. I don't want to go to college. I want to go buy jewelry. I want to go, I want to travel around the world. You can't stop them. That is one of the drawbacks of custodial accounts. So also, assets of these custodial accounts will be considered and expected to be used when it comes to financial aid. So it's counted for FAFSA. So it actually hurts you also. You could lose money on these accounts, remember? Depending on the investment. So please make sure to always diversify your investments. All of these things we're talking about could go up and they could go down. So please make sure you diversify your investments. The number 4 way, right? We've gone over savings accounts and CDs. We've gone over custodial accounts. We've gone over, what else have we gone over? Non-qualified investment accounts. And now we're going to talk about the number 4 way to save for college, And it's getting better. It's getting better. These things called Coverdell ESAs, also called Coverdell Education Savings Accounts. Some people call them education IRAs. They're a good way to save for college. Not the greatest way, but they're a good way to save for college. Investments that are used for higher education, and they also offer tax benefits, right? So let's talk about the benefits. Let's talk about the pros, and then we'll talk about the cons, and then we'll break it down for you. These accounts, these Coverdell ESAs, right? They have a great number of investment options also. Unlike savings accounts on CDs, you can do stocks, you can do bonds, you can do exchange traded funds, you can do mutual funds, you can do cash. So you get the opportunity to make more money. You can make a lot more money on these accounts. The investments also all grow tax-free. Hallelujah. You have to pay taxes, right? There's two things that are guaranteed. You're going to die one day in the flesh. Hopefully you rise in the spirit. You go to Christ and you live forever in the spirit. But your body's going to die one day. I'm sorry to tell you if you didn't already know. But you also got to pay taxes. Two things that are guaranteed: death and taxes. These grow tax-free, which is an amazing benefit. Albert Einstein was once repeated to say, one of the 9 greatest wonders on earth is the power of compounding, especially when it compounds tax-free. There is no limit on how much you can take out. So you can put as much money in there, you can't put as much money in there, but you can take as much money as you want out. When the funds are withdrawn, they're tax-free. I love tax-free. As long as they're used for qualified education expenses like tuition, mandatory fees for school, not for school, course required textbooks, computers, housing, college housing, and things like that. They can also be used, listen to this, they can also be used not just for college and trade school. My computer is about to die, so let me plug it in. You see what happens when you got to do this all by yourself? I have my team on the other side. They're controlling the computers and all that stuff, but I'm the only one over here. So one very, very important benefit of this Coverdell ESA is you can actually also use it for K through 12. It's not just for college and trade school. You can use it for trade, you can use it for art school, you can use it for apprenticeships, right? But you can also use it for K through 12. So if you have a child and you got to pay those expensive private school expenses, you can use it for room and board if the kid goes to boarding school, or you decide to go to boarding school. Transportation, tutoring, after school program, special needs education resources. It's limitless, but it has to be qualified education expenses. Coverdell ESAs receive certain protections in the event of a bankruptcy. And depending on the state, some more protections may be offered. Now, let's talk about the drawbacks of Coverdell ESAs. Thank you, Tim. Tim said interesting information. Well, I got a lot for you. I got a lot more to go. I'm not done yet. The finale is about to arrive, so please stay tuned. My friends still on Instagram. Hey guys on Instagram, good to see you. I'm glad most of you have now gone to YouTube. I see a lot of people going to YouTube. That's great. Please go to YouTube. This is good information for you to have. And whenever I look over here for the YouTube guys, I'm looking at my friends on Instagram. And when I look over here, I'm looking at YouTube and Facebook. So here's the drawback to Coverdell ESAs. You are limited to just $2,000 in contributions per year, but that's not all. If multiple people are funding the same beneficiary, then they must be aware of how much each is contributing. For example, if your grandparents, if the kid's grandparents are putting in $500, the parents only get to put in $1,500. So it's limited how much goes in. And especially with college as expensive as it is, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 per year, there may not be enough to accumulate for college. The income limits on who can contribute. There's also limits. If you're single and you want to put money into a Coverdell ESA, your income has to be at $110,000 or less. So if you're rich, you have a lot of money, you can't do it. If you file joint taxes with your spouse, your income has to be $220,000 or less. The funds must be withdrawn from the account by the time the beneficiary reaches 30 years old. Otherwise, you have to pay penalties and interest. So you have to deplete all this account. You can't hold it in there. If the funds are not withdrawn for qualified expenses, taxes will apply. Unless the beneficiary has special needs. Current tax law does not allow for funding after the beneficiary reaches 18 years old. So even when your kid is in college, is 19 years old, 20 years old, remember the kid owns it now and controls it. But you're not able to put in more money after 18, which could be a drawback because sometimes college takes 4 years. Sometimes they want to do a master's, they want to go to medical school. You can't put more money into those plans, right? So this eliminates the potential contributions during college and higher education. These accounts could also lose money. Remember, stocks and bonds. So please diversify. I'm going to keep harping on that. It's one of the most important things I can teach you. Please diversify. This is also used in calculating your financial need, but only a small portion of it affects it. Here's what I mean. If a parent owns the account, then only 5.56% of the Coverdell ESA value will be factored into the kids' financial aid program. Only 5.56%. So it's very small how it affects you, your financial aid. However, if the grandparents own the account, up to 50% of the student's income could be factored into the EFC. That's the amount you're able to pay. Which means if you take out $20,000 from a Coverdell ESA, the grandparent has the account, takes out $20,000 to use for the kids' expenses, they will reduce your financial need by $10,000. So it's best for the parents to actually do these accounts. Now let's talk about the fifth and final way that we recommend people consider when they want to fund education expenses. It's called the 529 Education Savings Plan. And this, by the way, in my opinion, is the absolute best way to fund college. Absolute best. You may have a combination of different ways, but this should be your mainstay, your main staple. 529 plans are similar to Coverdell ESAs, right? They're tax-advantaged investment accounts that could be used for college expenses. But here's the pros. Here's the benefits of funding 529 plans. Nearly every state, these are state plans. Nearly every state, I think maybe 1 or 2 states don't have these plans, but nearly every state has a 529 plan. Over 30 states offer a state income tax deduction. Hallelujah. Remember taxes? We like paying less taxes. Over 30 states offer a state income tax deduction, or even better yet, a credit, a dollar for dollar credit, which means everything you put in up to a certain limit that's set by the state, you take out of your income. Amazing, isn't it? But for most of those 30 states, you have to do their state plan. However, 7 states, Arizona, Arkansas, Missouri, Kansas City, Minnesota, Montana, and Pennsylvania, all offer tax parity, which means you can do some other state and you still get at least a portion of the tax credit or tax deduction, which is great. There's a wide array of investment options within 529 plans. You can do stocks, you can do bonds, you can do ETFs, mutual funds, cash, a lot of different investment options. It creates opportunities for higher returns, which leads to less money needing to be saved for college. If your investments are growing 8 or 9 or 10%, then maybe you have to put in less in terms of savings. And remember what Albert Einstein said about compounding. It's one of the 9 greatest wonders of the world. Funds withdrawn can be withdrawn tax-free. If you put in $10,000, it grows to $18,000 because it's been growing. At $8,000, if you use it for qualifying expenses, and I'll define that in a second, you don't have to pay any taxes. Hallelujah. What are qualifying education expenses? Tuition, mandatory fees, course required textbooks, and things like computers, housing, food on campus. It could also be used for K through 12, up to $10,000. Yep. Private school, elementary school. Yep. You could use it for K through 12. It's protected from creditors in general. If you get sued, most of the time in federal bankruptcy court, they can't come after your asset. And if you file for bankruptcy, very often, because that child is the beneficiary, you typically would not have to cough up the money in the 529 plan. And many states offer that protection too. There is no limit to how many 529 plans an individual can set up. You can set up 2, 4, 6, 8. There's no limit. Grandpa can set one up. Grandma can set one up. Sister can set one up. Aunt can set one up. Daddy can set one up. Mommy can set. I can set one up. I probably won't because I don't know you, but maybe I will actually. Why not? But anyone can set up a plan for anybody else, and there's no limit. A lifetime maximum of $10,000 could be withdrawn. I hear this. Hear me out. Because this is not just for saving for college. If you have student loans now, the law allows you to use up to $10,000 in a 529 plan to pay off your student debt. Hallelujah. I love it. So it's not just for people saving for college. Even people who currently have student debt, yep, they can use up to $10,000 in the 529. There's no income limit. So unlike the Coverdell ESA, that's limited to $110,000 per person, you can make $10 million and you're still allowed to put money to a 529 plan for yourself or your child. So many people say, hey, listen, I have enough money to write a cash check. I write a check every year for my child. Why do I need to borrow money? Why do I need to save? And I tell them, do you like paying taxes? They say no. I say, well, you get a huge amount of tax savings because of the compounding of interest tax-free, and you get to pull it out without paying taxes. So why not? 529 plans are for wealthy people, middle-income people, and not so wealthy people. Anyone can do these plans. They're really flexible. The account owner, here's one of the key benefits. Unlike the custodial account, the account owner maintains full control and ownership of the account, even if the beneficiary reaches the age of majority. If your son is 28 years old and in medical school, you still control the account. He does not, or she does not get the chance to take all that money and buy a house in Bel Air or buy a house in Westlake, or buy a house in Westlake in Texas, one of the rich places, or buy a Ferrari with the money that you're saving for college. They don't get that right. You control it. That's great. If the funds are not needed for that beneficiary, so let's say your kid gets a scholarship or your kid gets a grant, you can just turn it for the next kid. You can use it for the next kid. You can use it for yourself if you want to go back to school. And you can actually use this for their child. One of the things I talk to a lot of my clients about is creating a multi-generational legacy fund for their family. You can create a fund for yourself, for your kids, their kids, kids, and so on and so forth to benefit your generations. A 529 plan is a great way to do it. Because if your kid gets a scholarship or a grant and doesn't use it, you can give it to their child. You can help your kids get educated. Kids, listen to this. Studies have shown, one particular study has shown that kids with 529 plans are 7 times more likely to go to college. 7 times more likely to go. Imagine, you can give your child a legacy of college. If your child knows that they have a 529 college savings plan, they're 7 times more likely to go to college. Hallelujah. Education, as you and I know, is the key to financial freedom for many people. It doesn't have to be college. It could be trade school. It could be art school. It could be boot camp for coding, boot camp. Most plans offer what you call a set it and forget it investment option. So you don't have to diversify and pick the stock. Pick what you call target date funds. When you're younger, it's more aggressive. It gives you time to grow. When you're older and closer to college, it gets more conservative, so you don't lose money. And it's easy to maintain, and it diversifies for you to minimize losses. You can still lose money. You can always still lose money, but it minimizes the chances that you lose money because it minimizes the up and down fluctuations. There is no age limit to when your funds could be withdrawn. It could be 18, it could be 20, it could be 28. You can use it for yourself. I don't know how old you are. You could be 30 or 50 or 8 or 60. You could still use a 529 plan. The income limits are very high. The lifetime limits of how much you can put in these plans. You can have in some states up to $235,000. In some other states, you get up to $529,000. That's a lot of money to be allowed to put into a tax-deferred plan. The higher contribution limits are much higher compared to an ESA, Coverdell ESA. How much can you put into this plan every year? Up to $15,000 per individual, or $30,000. So if you have a child, mom can put in $15,000, dad can put in $15,000. It's $30,000. However, listen to this. You're allowed to front load 5 years. What that means is if you have cash, you have money, you had a great year, you can put in up to 5 years worth of contributions. That's $75,000 today for your child. You don't get to put anything else in for the next 5 years, but guess what? You can put in $75,000 for your child. Your spouse could put in $75,000. That's $150,000. Hallelujah! Imagine how much money that's going to grow too. I know most people don't have that, but keep it in mind. The next time you hit a big, get a big bonus at work, you can do that. So, here's the cons. There's always pros and there's always cons, right? Here's one of the downsides, a few of them, for 529 plans. The funds can only be used for education. So unlike a custodial account, you have to use it for qualified education expenses like tuition and books. If the funds are withdrawn for non-qualified expenses, like buying a house or a car, then you're going to pay taxes and a 10% penalty. We don't want that. There's no self-directed investments, which means you can't buy real estate. You can't buy gold. I don't recommend necessarily you buy gold, but you can't, which means that you're limited to the choices the state fund gives you. And sometimes the fees could be higher. So you got to be aware of fees. You got to check this thing out. The states that give you a tax credit or a tax deduction, those states, if you roll your money out, you get a tax deduction for a few years, and you roll the money out, that state may reclaim that tax deduction. Give me my tax deduction since inception. So be very careful about rolling money from one plan to another if you get a tax deduction in your state. 529 plans have a minimal impact on financial aid. For parent-owned plans, you get to do that. They are reported on FAFSA. That's called the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. But 529 assets, just like Coverdell ESAs, only reduce your the asset reduces your need-based age by only 5.64%. It's very small, right? It ignores distributions. When you take cash out the plan, it doesn't count that as income. But a grandparent plan, while it's not counted as an asset for FAFSA, when you take money out, just like a Coverdell ESA, when you take money out the plan, up to 50% of that reduces the amount you qualify for financial aid. So please be very careful of that. Setting up 529 plans, one of the downsides is sometimes it could be very clunky and cumbersome and very paper intensive. Look, I'm a financial advisor. I've advised many people on setting up 529 plans. It's very paper intensive. It's very cumbersome to set them up. Mostly slow, clunky state websites sometimes. And so what I decided to do, I've set up a way for you to set up a 529 plan if you want to, right? And the reason why I set it up, I spent a lot of my money doing it, is because there's this huge disparity of wealth, right? The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. And a big part of the reason why, there's many reasons why, because a lot of the richer people, they're able to write checks for their kids to go to college, right? They know what 529 plans are, and they are able to fund it without the kids having student loans. The underserved communities, the less fortunate, let's say, unfortunately, many of them don't even know what a 529 plan is. Many of them don't have the access. And when they do, it's hard to fund a 529 plan. It's hard to write a check every month for $500 or $800 into a plan. I created a plan for you called Sootchy, SOOTCHY.com. What Sootchy is, it's a way for you to get access to these plans, right? I'll be talking to you more about Sootchy. Today's not about Sootchy. It's about the entirety of the 529 plan. But I just want to tell you what I did. I created a plan where it's a mobile app. It's actually available on the App Store. We just did a full launch on March 21st. We just actually released it. It's for you. It's free. We don't charge you anything. It gives you access to a 529 college plan, right? If you're underserved or you're middle class, even if you're wealthy, but this is focused on the people who don't have access, it creates access for you. And I'll give you an example. We're working with a school district now in Arkansas called the Lighthouse School District, underserved communities. Many of those kids, 6 to 10 of those kids won't go to college. And so we adopted, a lot of them, and we said, look, we're going to do what we can to set up a plan for you. Sometimes we'll put money into it for you. And we want to make sure if you want to go to college or you want to go to a trade school, or you want to get a degree, you want to medical school, we will work with you to help you do that by helping you fund a plan. The second problem that we solve is the affordability of these plans. So even when people know about 529s, they can't afford it. We create a gifting platform. You know, when you have a birthday or a holiday, and your friends and family, they come and they bring all these toys and they bring out these gifts, these things you don't need. They end up in the pool, or they end up in the kid's mouth where they shouldn't be, or they end up in the trash can. If you are able to get those people to take that money that they use for wasteful gifts and toys that the kid doesn't know existed 3 years later, if they can take that money and put it into a 529 college plan, remember it's invested in a plan that grows tax deferred and you can pull out for taxes. We've created the way for you through Suchi. It's seamless. Now, we've just launched it. We're going to be adding the gifting feature in a few weeks. Then we're going to be adding traditional custodial accounts. A lot of different things we're going to be adding for you. But again, today's not about Suchi. Today's about it's about college savings. And I just told you, ladies and gentlemen, the 5 ways for you to save for college. I gave you the best ways and the not so great ways. I started with savings accounts and I gave you the drawback. I don't like savings accounts for saving for college. You don't get enough money. You don't get enough, and it's not protected from creditors. Investment accounts are better, but they're still taxable and they're still not protected from creditors. Custodial accounts are good to save for college, but they're limited in their usefulness, primarily because the kid owns the plan at 18 years old and can do whatever they want. We don't want that now. These kids spending all our money. Instead of going to school, they spend all our money on, buying, stuff that they don't want us to know about. Number 4, Coverdell ESAs, also called education IRAs. These plans are also good, but they're limited by how much you make, and they're also limited in terms of contributions you could put in. In my opinion, and I've been doing this a long time, the best way to fund college is through a 529 college education plan. Go to Suchi.com. Or go to your state's plan. Google state 529 plan. Look at your state's plan. If you want a seamless, easier way, go to Suchi.com. But please do something about it. If you have a child and you want your kid to go to college and you don't want to have to struggle to write that check, or you don't want your kid to take out student loans, which hold them back, please set up one of these 5 plans. My preference is a 529 plan for college. Wow, we've said a lot today. I wanted to keep this short, but we're at 50 minutes now, so I'm going to turn it. I'm going to end it. But let me tell you what we're going to do next week. I see Fidelia. How are you? It says if you have this 529, I'm going to take 1 or 2 questions. By the way, if you have this 529 plan for your child, can the child still qualify for Pell grants from the government? Absolutely. Doesn't affect. I already told you that when you fill out the FAFSA form, you have to include it if you're a parent. You have to include the number on there that you saved for 529, but it doesn't affect, it only affects you up to 5.64%. It's very, very small, minimal. And it doesn't affect when you calculate this asset qualification, this income qualification. It doesn't qualify for income, doesn't affect you on the income side. So it's a great way to save for college. Should we take one more question? Well, I don't know if it's a question or it's a statement. Here's Tim. Tim Thomas, how are you? Tim was one of the first to join today. And I'm writing all of this down as you speak. Thank you, Tim. It's really good information. I'll tell you what's better. Come back and listen to it. Listen to it. You can write it down, but come back and listen to this. It's a great way for you to absorb more. Tim says, this is very important for me to know in the future as I'm going to enroll in online college classes. Hallelujah. I like that. If you can't, because of the pandemic, you can't go be in, sit down and be in a classroom, do online, get a college education if you can, right? Enroll for some classes. It's very, very important. It's been demonstrated that kids who go to college make $1 million more than kids who only have a high school degree. So if you want to give your kids a chance in life to break that cycle of, just doing the same thing over and over again without having to break out and become one of the 1%, if you really want to give your kid a chance, send them to college or trade school, or boot camp for coding boot camp. Send them to a higher education. And please try to limit the student loans. And the way to do that is by setting up a college fund early. And my preference is a 529 plan. I've created a way for you to do that through Suchi.com. Now, next week, we're going to do something that we had so much fun doing this last month, that I'm going to do it again. I'm going to take your questions. Please send your questions to Dave's. What's my email again? daveswealthstrategies.com. Alex, could you put it up there? daveswealthstrategies.com, right? Please make sure to send me your questions on anything we've talked about. We've had 8 lessons in season 2. Make sure to also watch season 1. Investments, stocks, bonds, protection from credit. Season 1 went over a huge amount of things. It's all in my YouTube channel. Season 2 went over the basics. We're on lesson 8. I've gone through 8 lessons with you to help you raise yourself from wherever you could be, rich or not rich. Everything I've been telling you could help raise your standard of living. And so next week, I'm going to take your questions. I'm going to have nothing prepared. I'm just going to take your questions. But here's what I want you to do. Send me a video. daveswealthstrategies@gmail.com. Send me a video question. Make sure to look good, because I'm going to put you on air. I'm going to put your question on air, or I'm going to listen to your question. We're going to see you. daveswealthstrategies.com. daveswealthstrategies@gmail.com. And I will answer as many of your questions as I can. It doesn't matter what the question is, please do. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been my friends, it's been a great. Hi, Chatty. I love the help you give. Thank you. Thanks for listening. Darlene, how amazing advice always. Thank you, Fidelia. Tim Thomas definitely will tune in next week. Please do. This is great advice. Demold, I'm headed back to season 1. I'm highly interested in investments. Please watch season 1. It gives you all the tips you need to help you maybe make money. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you next week. Thank you very much. I love you. God bless.